Have you ever been alone during a blackout? No lights, no Wi-Fi, no one knows where you are. And then, footsteps above your head, a face pressed against the window, a voice whispering your name from the darkness. That's not a coincidence. That's the moment you realize the dark is always watching, and it knows exactly who you are. Welcome to CreepLine, where terrifying tales are told from the heart of unease. In today's video, we'll step through 3 doors, 3 true stories about ordinary people caught in blackouts they'll never forget. A husband steps outside to check the fuse and realizes his wife is trapped inside with a man holding a gun. A young man, temporarily living in a basement, hears his name being called out from the shadows. A night shift security guard comes face to face with whisperers in a warehouse with no way out. If you love stories that make your heart beat faster, hit that subscribe button. Every subscription is a powerful push for me to keep telling the stories most people are too afraid to tell. Thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting and staying with me. And if the power goes out tonight, don't open the door right away. Make sure the voice calling your name belongs to someone you know. On a cold night in early March, as the wind howled through the empty suburban streets, Matt returned home from a long, late shift. The clock was nearing midnight. He was too exhausted to even take off his coat, just tossed his briefcase on the floor, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and dropped onto the sofa. No TV, no lights. The darkness in the house was sliced only by the glow of the street lamp through the window, sickly yellow and flickering like the breath of someone dying. For Matt, it was a rare moment of peace, the feeling of isolation after a loud, chaotic day at the office. He closed his eyes, took a sip of the cold beer. His mind was still buzzing with tangled thoughts, bills, work, and the petty arguments with his wife lately. He wanted to shut it all off, but then, pop, everything cut out. No warning, no hesitation. Every light, every electric device in the house went dead at once. In that brief moment, Matt heard a very familiar sound, a dull pop, like someone had yanked the main power cord with bare hands. He shot upright. Matt's house had lost power before, more than once. Usually it was due to old wiring or some dumb squirrel chewing what it shouldn't. But this time felt different. The air inside the house grew heavier. All the familiar hums, the fridge, the wheeze of the heater, were gone. Only the sound of Matt's heartbeat remained, loud and pounding. He stood up and walked to the front door to check outside. The neighboring houses were all brightly lit. A few porch lights blinked steadily, almost mocking the darkness that had swallowed Matt's home. Only his house, just one pocket of darkness. Matt turned to head back in, hand brushing the doorknob. He froze. The door was locked. From the inside, he twisted it harder. No movement. His heart pounded, and a cold rush crept down his spine. "What the hell?" he whispered. His wife was still inside, asleep, alone, and clearly, something wasn't right. Matt stood frozen before the locked door. His cold hands clenched the doorknob as if gripping harder might somehow bring everything back to normal. But the door held firm. No movement. Not a sound from inside. He rushed around to the back door, his heartbeat pounding as if someone were counting down the seconds. The back door was locked too. That made no sense. His wife, Jenna, always left the back door unlocked at night. She hated the feeling of being trapped and often stepped out onto the porch for air before going to bed. Matt had warned her about it plenty of times, but tonight, the door was locked from the inside. Every muscle in his back tightened. every nerve on edge as if he were stepping into a predator's hunting ground. Running along the side of the house to check the fuse box, Matt stopped dead in his tracks. The garden hose he had coiled neatly that morning now lay stretched out across the ground like a dead snake. The nozzle was draped over the fuse box cover, wide open. Inside, the wires had been cut. Not damaged, not windblown. Someone had severed the power manually. A chill surged from deep within. He backed away, his eyes drawn to the living room window. In the darkness, a flicker of movement, not a trick of the light. There was illumination, but not from lamps, flashlights. Not one, but two narrow beams moving through the house, sweeping across the walls like predators scenting prey. Someone was inside, rummaging through their home, and Jenna was still in there. Rage flared, overpowering fear. Matt reached into his pocket. Empty. He'd left his phone on the couch. He was about to sprint to the neighbor's house, but froze. He couldn't. Jenna was asleep, still in there. If he left now and they went upstairs. Without hesitating, Matt bent down, grabbed a few small rocks scattered in the yard, and ran to the bedroom window. His hands trembled, but he threw them one by one, clack, clack, until the third one hit. The curtain snapped open. Jenna's face appeared, terrified. Shh! Someone's in the house. Hide now. In the closet. Don't say anything. She vanished instantly. Matt turned and sprinted to the neighbor's house. He pounded on the door, voice frantic, begging to call the police. His hands shook so badly that he nearly dropped the phone while dialing 911. When the police arrived, they kicked in the door. Matt followed close behind, his heart threatening to explode. But the house was empty. The back door was wide open. Muddy footprints tracked across the floor, leading out toward the woods. They were gone, and they had taken too much with them. Matt had never seen Jenna shake like that, but it was what she said afterward that dragged him into the abyss. Jenna sat in the chair, wrapped in a thin blanket, eyes dazed like she had just stepped out of a nightmare she hadn't fully escaped. Police moved around the house, snapping photos, jotting notes, checking every trace. But Matt couldn't take his eyes off his wife. She gripped his hand tightly, but her own was still trembling uncontrollably. "What happened?" Matt asked, his voice low but urgent. Jenna took a deep breath, her gaze fixed and unblinking. "Right after you told me to hide, I ran into the closet. I locked the door from the inside and tried not to breathe." Matt swallowed hard. About 10 seconds later, I heard footsteps, heavy, slow, like he wanted me to hear them. Then, she paused, eyes widening. There was a loud kick against the bedroom door. He came in. A deadly silence fell over the room. I didn't see his face, but I heard the sound of a gun being cocked. Matt froze. He didn't say anything, didn't call my name, just stood there, in the middle of the room, completely silent, like he was listening, like he knew someone was in there. She shivered. I held my mouth shut, didn't dare cry. I thought, this is it. This is how I die. Matt gripped her hand tightly. Then suddenly, from somewhere outside, there was a noise, like someone throwing rocks at the window. I didn't know what it was at the time, but he heard it. He turned his head, walked away quickly, and disappeared. No gunshot, no rush, as if the whole thing was just a test. The police confirmed. No signs of forced entry through the front door, just a destroyed fuse box, a few items missing, the back door left wide open. Matt walked through each room, eyeing every detail. Drawers yanked open, closets emptied. But one thing caught his attention more than anything else: the wedding photo on the table. It was face down, not fallen, not knocked over. Someone had deliberately turned it over. A chill ran down Matt's spine. The intruder hadn't come just to steal. They came with a purpose, with a plan, and they knew this house. Matt looked toward the living room window, where the streetlight still cast its faint glow. The sickly yellow light stretched long shadows across the cold wooden floor. From that moment on, he knew. The worst part wasn't that they had come. It was that they had chosen this house. They knew his wife was home, and they might come back. 3 months had passed. They still lived in that house. Still the same sofa where Matt sat every night after work. Still the wedding photo, now standing upright again, but placed deeper inside the shelf, out of sight. They'd replaced the doors, installed a new security system, cameras in every corner, and even added motion sensors in the bedroom. But the one thing they couldn't install was a sense of safety. Jenna couldn't sleep without the lights on. Every strong gust of wind made Matt bolt upright in the middle of the night. Sometimes he stayed awake for hours, staring at the live feed on his phone, waiting for something to happen again. The police had found nothing, no traces, no suspect, no leads. The incident was logged as an armed intrusion with unclear intent. They said it was possibly a failed burglary. Matt didn't believe that. On quiet nights, when the world felt eerily still, he would think about the man who stood in their bedroom, the one who said nothing, took nothing, just stood there, with a gun in his hand and his ears, listening. What would have happened if Matt hadn't thrown that rock? If Jenna had coughed? If the closet door had creaked, even slightly? One night around 2 a.m., the backyard motion sensor went off. Matt jumped up, heart pounding out of his chest. He ran to check. There was nothing but tree shadows stretching across the concrete. But the next morning, among the dew fogging the back window, he saw something that froze him in place. The print of a single palm, clear, cold, like a message. Matt didn't tell Jenna. Some memories are not meant to be touched again, and some intruders, though no longer inside, haven't truly left. Alex never thought he'd end up moving back in with his parents at 28, but life doesn't ask for permission. A failed business, mounting credit card debt, and a girlfriend who left without saying goodbye. As he packed the last of his belongings into the paint-chipped old car, Alex felt like he was swallowing his entire life in reverse, bitter and heavy. His parents' basement became a temporary shelter. Not bad. There was a bed, an old TV, even a mini kitchen, like a tiny apartment for a washed-up loser. Alex gave a bitter chuckle at the thought. That night brought a heavy rainstorm. Wind howled through the door cracks, and thunder rolled like war drums. His parents were away for the weekend, off on a trip. The entire 3-story house was his, and the eerie darkness just outside. Alex was curled under a blanket, listening to the rain tapping against the basement window, when suddenly, everything cut out. Population blackout, no TV, no lights, just thick, oily darkness pouring across the room. Alex groaned, fumbling for his phone to turn on the flashlight. He scrolled through old messages, no signal. "Shit," he muttered. And then, a sound rang out, sharp, heavy, like something slammed hard into the window. He froze. A branch? The wind? His heartbeat pounded louder than the rain. Alex switched on the flashlight, moved toward the window. The glass was icy cold. Rain lashed the outside like whips. And there, a face. A man, pale skin, wide-eyed, pressed right up against the glass like he was trying to peer into Alex's soul. Their eyes met for a split second, but it felt like time froze. Then the man vanished into the darkness. Alex stumbled back, dropping his phone. No time to breathe. Footsteps. From above. From the floor above him. Someone was inside the house. Alex tried to stay calm, but his palms were slick with sweat, and his lips pressed tightly together to stifle the sharpness of his breath. He stood frozen in the basement darkness, clearly hearing the creaking of wooden floorboards above, each step slow, deliberate, as if whoever was up there was searching. There was no sound of forced entry, no shouting, just footsteps, as if they had been there for a while. He crouched down, picked his phone up off the floor, and turned the flashlight back on. Still, no signal, no Wi-Fi, completely cut off. There was no way to call the police. His heart pounded like war drums as Alex crept toward the stairs leading up to the first floor. He tiptoed as if the floor beneath him might shatter at any moment. Each step was a trial. When he reached the top, he lifted his head and froze. 3 figures. In the darkness, the weak beam of his phone flashlight revealed them. 3 shadowy figures rummaging through the living room. One had his back to Alex, broad-shouldered, wearing black, holding something in his hand, a handgun. Alex couldn't breathe. He pulled back, held his breath, and retreated step by step. And then, a deep voice spoke. Calm, quiet, not yelling, not urgent. Just one soft sentence, but it crushed every thread of hope. Alex is in the basement. Go find him. His world stopped. They knew his name. These weren't just burglars. This wasn't a random break-in. They knew him. Maybe they'd been watching him. Maybe they'd been in this house before. Maybe they were playing a game he didn't know the rules to. Alex turned and bolted down the stairs, slamming into the wall but not stopping. Panic drowned out logic. He locked the basement door, tore through the room looking for a place to hide. Too late. Footsteps on the stairs. Fast. Too fast. He looked around. The basement window. The only one. But it was locked from the inside. No time. Alex grabbed a stool, climbed up, and smashed the glass with his elbow. Shards cut deep into his arm and blood splattered the wall, but he didn't stop. He squeezed through the opening, his body scraping against the sharp edges, rain lashing his face like whips. He tumbled out, rolling across the backyard, scrambling to his feet and running into the darkness. Only when he was far enough away did he dare turn his phone back on. There was a signal. Hands shaking, he called 911. His voice cracked like a sob. They know my name. They know where I am. Rain kept pouring as Alex clung to a nearby lamppost, gasping for breath. Blood dripped from his arm, soaking into his shirt, cold and sticky. His hands trembled so hard he nearly dropped the phone as the police picked up. Please, there's someone in my house. They have weapons, and they know my name. Stay calm. We're on our way. Please confirm your address. Alex gave the address, then collapsed onto the wet grass like a torn sack. Every sound in the darkness made him flinch. Behind him, the house loomed in darkness, the basement windows still faintly glowing from within, reflecting the rain in smears like clotted blood. 13 minutes later, the red and blue of police lights blazed at the end of the street. Alex ran into the road, waving frantically. 2 officers jumped out, fully armed. They entered the house, flashlights sweeping every corner. Alex huddled under the neighbor's awning, heart still refusing to steady. Then, after a moment, the police emerged. "No one's in the house," one officer said. The ground floor door was open. No sign of forced entry. but muddy footprints lead from inside to the back door. "No chance anyone copied the key?" the other asked. Alex shook his head, lips pale. "Only my parents, I swear." They brought him inside to confirm. Stepping back into the basement felt like entering the grave of his memories. There were no obvious signs, no notes, no threats. But when the flashlight swept across the old fridge, something made Alex's knees nearly give out. A piece of paper, pinned with a magnet. One he was sure hadn't been there when he fled. On it, a single scrawled line in thick black marker. "You run fast, Alex." Below that, a crude sketch of 3 figures, one holding a gun. Next to them, an arrow points down to the basement. "Oh God." Alex backed away, heart seemingly frozen. The police immediately took the note as evidence, but no fingerprints were found. Everything felt orchestrated. No cameras, no witnesses, no unfamiliar faces were seen in the neighborhood. Alex left the house that night, never looking back. He never saw those people again. But sometimes, in fitful sleep, he still hears that voice, deep, calm, certain. "Alex is in the basement. Go find him." And he knows. All it would take is one more blackout, and they'd return. After that night, Alex never returned to his parents' basement. He moved into a small apartment over 50 miles away from the old neighborhood. No basement, no low windows at ground level. He installed 3 locks on the front door, surveillance cameras in every corner, and always carried a folding knife with him. But not everyone understood, because no one else saw that face through the glass. No one else heard his name spoken in the dark, like a sentence already passed. The police concluded it was a targeted break-in, but with no data, no suspects. They guessed it might have been someone from social media, an anonymous stalker who had accessed Alex's personal information. But he knew better. Those people didn't just know his name. They were playing a game. A few weeks later, while sorting mail outside his new apartment, Alex found a package with no return address, no postage, as if someone had placed it into the mailbox by hand. Inside, there was nothing but a single piece of paper typed, "Nice apartment. But that 3rd floor is a little too easy to break into." Alex dropped the note, head spinning. He rushed to the door, locked it, pulled the curtains, and turned off the lights. Sweat trickled down his neck like someone had poured ice water over him. He didn't sleep that night, or the next, because he understood something vital. Those people didn't need to be inside your home to make you feel like you never left their sight. And once they've said your name, you're no longer a stranger, you're a target. Ethan had never liked the night shift, but work was work. And being a security guard at a massive warehouse tucked deep inside a deserted industrial zone was the best he could find after a long stretch of unemployment. The warehouse was like a maze of steel and concrete, hundreds of towering shelves, cold fluorescent lights, and straight aisles that felt like they'd never end. Every night, Ethan sat alone in the security room, a small glass box with a control panel, camera screens, and an outdated radio. That Thursday, the rain came down in sheets. The thick darkness outside made the whole warehouse feel like it had slipped into another world. Ethan checked the cameras, listened to the wind slam against the metal walls, and hoped nothing would happen. But at exactly 2:17 a.m., the entire warehouse went dark. No warning siren, no flickering lights. Everything blacked out as if someone had hit a switch to erase all light. Ethan jumped up, palms sweating. Not a single glimmer, just the sound of rain and the pounding of his heart in his ears. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out of the security room. The sickly yellow beam swept across the towering shelves, casting long shadows like monster claws on the concrete floor. Every step echoed in the vast space like a forgotten cathedral. He had to check the circuit breaker. That was protocol. But his heart wasn't following procedure. It pounded like an alarm, warning him that something was very wrong. As Ethan passed aisle 9, a sharp clatter rang out from deeper within, a piece of metal hitting the concrete. Loud, cold. He froze, flashlight swinging toward the sound. No one, just shelves, and darkness as thick as sludge. Then he saw it, a narrow beam of light flickering briefly at the far end of the aisle, just like his own flashlight. But Ethan knew he was the only one scheduled for the night shift. So who was in the dark with him? Ethan kept his flashlight aimed straight at where the flicker of light had passed. No footsteps, no breathing, no doors creaking open. But that light, he hadn't imagined it. He stepped slowly toward the end of the aisle, his heartbeat pounding like a slow drum. The shadows cast by his flashlight danced on the walls, turning every box into a grotesque shape. No one. Ethan spun around, sweeping the beam in every direction. At his feet, a thin trail of water led toward the loading area. On the concrete floor, 2 wet footprints, clear, defined, as if someone had just stepped in from the rain. But the back door was still locked. He followed the trail cautiously. As he neared loading dock 4, a sickening smell rose, rusted metal mixed with stagnant rainwater. Ethan's stomach twisted. He shined his light toward the corner, and what he saw froze the blood in his veins. A crowbar lay on the floor, brand new and soaking wet. It hadn't been there before. He was certain. He pulled out the taser from his pocket, gripping it tightly. "Whoever's in here better show themselves," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, though his throat had gone dry. No response, only whispering. At first, Ethan thought he was imagining it, but then it came again, faint, like wind seeping through the walls, but undeniably voices, 2 of them, speaking softly. The language was unclear, but the tone, urgent, tense. He turned off the flashlight, silent, listening. The whispering stopped immediately. Ethan stood in the pitch black, clutching the taser, heart hammering against his ribs. Then, a soft click behind him. He spun around, nothing there. But when he switched the flashlight back on, he saw something that nearly dropped him to his knees in horror. On the floor, just a few feet away, lay a security badge. His badge. Someone had taken it and placed it back like a message. Ethan didn't remember dropping it. And if he had, why was it lying here, in the darkest corner of the warehouse? They weren't just here. They were watching his every move. And they knew exactly who he was. Ethan backed away, eyes locked on the name badge lying on the ground. Every nerve in his body stretched tight. There was no doubt anymore. Someone was playing a cat and mouse game with him, and they knew exactly where he'd go. He couldn't call the police. His phone was in the security room. Too far, too risky. He had to get himself out of there, right now. Ethan turned and ran down the aisle between the shelves, flashlight bouncing with each stride. His footsteps echoed eerily, but then another set joined his, off rhythm. Not an echo. Someone was following. He glanced back, saw no one, but heard the swish of fabric, ragged breathing, and the faint clink of metal. Approaching the breaker room, Ethan nearly slipped when the flashlight swept across a figure. Just across the room, in the shadowed corner, stood a man in black clothing, hood up, crowbar in hand. He stood perfectly still, staring directly at Ethan without blinking. Ethan raised the taser. "Don't take another step." But the figure didn't move. only tilted his head slightly, like he was studying his prey. A second set of footsteps behind him. Ethan spun around. A second person, shorter, was walking toward him from the opposite end of the aisle. They were boxed in. Ethan shouted, cranked the flashlight to full brightness, and turned to bolt down the left corridor, the only way out. His breath heaved, the beam flickering. He saw the exit door leading to the parking lot at the end of the hallway. Just get there. Just crash. A metal object slammed down in front of him, nearly tripping him. He blinked. On the floor lay a second crowbar. They didn't just have one weapon, and there were more than two of them. Ethan lunged for the door, slammed his shoulder into it. It burst open, and rain hit him like a cold slap. He ran into the night, not looking back, until the red and blue lights of a police cruiser came into view. Out of breath, he stumbled to the car, shouting. When the officers entered the warehouse, there was no one left. No footprints, no camera footage. All data gone, as if it had never existed. Only one thing remained. Ethan's name badge, left right in the center of the hallway. Taped to the back of it was a note. "We saw you. And next time, you won't run so fast." Ethan never went back to the warehouse. After that night, he resigned from his job, wiped all his personal information from the internet, and even changed his phone number. He moved in with his sister in a different city, a place where the streets were always crowded and the lights never went out. But something still followed. The first week, he woke up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, with no idea why. The second week, he discovered that the doorbell camera had captured a man in black standing silently at the front door for exactly 37 seconds, then disappearing without a trace. No face is identifiable. No footprints on the porch. He took the footage to the police. They filed a report, but said it might have been a delivery guy at the wrong address. But Ethan knew better. In the third week, a package was hand-delivered to him. No sender, no postage. Inside was a map of the city, with a single red circle marking the location of his new apartment. No message, nothing else. Just a reminder. They knew. He didn't tell his sister, didn't tell anyone. No one would believe him, or if they did, they wouldn't be able to help. On his final night in the city, he heard a sound, soft, metallic scratching against the window glass. Not too loud, not too long. Just enough to know someone was out there, waiting for him to pull the curtain aside. Ethan didn't move. He sat frozen on the bed until sunrise, eyes wide open, unblinking. Then he packed his things and left the city, once again. Because now he understood one thing. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter how well you hide. Once you're the one they choose to follow, you're no longer a stranger. You belong to them. 3 blackout nights. 3 moments when ordinary people came face to face with the inexplicable. A man was locked outside while someone with a gun stood inside with his wife. A man hears his name spoken aloud by a stranger in the middle of the night. A man hunted by whispering figures in the dark. You can turn off the lights when you go to sleep, but you can't shut out the real darkness, the one that watches silently, that hears your heartbeat and waits for you to make a mistake. If you're still here, listening to the very end, I'm truly grateful. CreepLine was created not just to tell scary tales, but to help you confront the most primal fear of all, the fear of being seen, being followed, being chosen. If these stories gave you chills, hit the like button so I know you want more. And don't hesitate to comment below, which story gave you goosebumps? And what would you do if you were in their shoes? And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber is a huge motivation for me to keep digging deeper, to uncover the mysteries most choose to stay silent about. The more support you give, the more reasons I have to bring you stories you won't hear anywhere else. Turn off the lights, if you dare. But remember, if someone calls your name in the dark, make sure they're human. I'm CreepLine. See you in the next video, if you're still here.